Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week's episode is brought to you by the Which Side Media Collective store. All month long, you can get a free patch with every shirt that you purchase. Just use promo code FREEPATCH.
Most of our designs you can get in a patch or a shirt, so if you want, you can get the same design on both, or you can mix it up and get some different things going. So go grab yourself the new vegan Vespa logo-inspired shirt, and grab a patch. Grab a patch that's like, hey, all cats are beautiful, because, you know, cats are beautiful.
They really are. ACAB.
Just use the promo code FREEPATCH. That's whichsidecollective.org. And remember, free patch. Because, you know, you get a free patch.
You earned it.
It's pretty straightforward. If you can't remember that, you know, hit us up. We'll tell you, hey, it's free patch. Hey, what's that code to get a free patch? It's free patch.
Free patch. whichsidecollective.org.
Have you remembered it yet? Do we need to say it again? We'll say it at the end. There you go.
Yeah. Free patch.
This is episode 180.
Yeah, we talked with Gina Cornia from Utahns Against Hunger.
I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. She's a little bit different than some of our wheelhouse that we have. So, but out there fighting, just like everyone else is. So, you know, super important work that she does, making sure people are getting fed, working on food insecurity problems. So, stick tuned for that. If you or someone you know is facing food insecurity, you know, there's resources out there for you. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We all need food and we all need to eat. So, you know, what are some of those resources, Jordan?
Well, you can always check out and see if your area has a local Food Not Bombs chapter. No one will be turned away. Everyone can get some food. There's also another organization called Burrito Brigade, and they give out free burritos. So check them out.
And if you don't have either of those in your area, reach out to Gina or a very similar organization in your area. They will help you the best they possibly can. So, hey, Jordan, what news and events do we have going on this week?
Well, we just relaunched our website because it was attacked by hackers and brought down. Yeah. It was a pretty bad one. This big bot attacked us and turned down the entire server. But we're back up with a better website. Gave us an excuse to revamp it, and so you can go check that out. Also, not this week, but coming up soon is May Day. So make sure you're prepared for that. Find a local event, and if you don't have one, you can always start one. You better hurry.
It's never too late.
No.
Go get out into the streets.
Yeah.
International Day of Solidarity. May Day. That's not a real song or anything like that. I don't know where that came from. Just my soul.
International Day of Solidarity?
Yeah.
May Day?
May Day.
Power to the workers. Got a day and it's in May. You got May Day. Doobity-doo.
For the slingshot this week, April 20th, 1979.
It's also 420.
It is 420. This might be correlated. I don't know. But in 1979, U.S. President Jimmy Carter was attacked by a rabbit on a canoe trip.
Rabbits smoking all that.
I ain't saying who is smoking.
Grass.
Just saying.
Rabbit grass.
Rabbit grass. If you like these little tidbits of history, we pull these out of the Slingshot Personal Organizer. Go check them out. They're pretty damn amazing. You can get one at a local info shop or an online info shop like AK Press. I sincerely hope you enjoy this episode.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
So you're saying you worked at Utah Issues. I'm not familiar with that organization. You said it's no longer around, but what was that organization about?
Utah Issues, it was a broad-based public policy advocacy organization. We worked on healthcare, housing, and wealth.
So
I went there in Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, what really brought you into that line of work and wanting to do that?
You know, it was it's sort of a combination of the way I was raised and my Mormon Mission experience and my experience at the Benyon Center. I'd say would be the sort of the three things that interested in, poverty in general, but really hunger specifically. You know, I was raised in a pretty typical Republican Mormon home, but we always had either foster kids or kids who were living with us who were friends of family, and we also always just had enough. We always had enough food, enough shelter, and I had been a theater major and sort of was grappling with what to do with my life. I wanted to, follow the typical and get married and have babies, and that didn't happen. And so that's when I decided to go on a Mormon mission and served in South America and Chile. And that just really shook my world up in every conceivable way.
I served in with really people who were so poor. These people who were they had nothing. And I think the thing that sort of shook me up, was this combination of, one, how generous of spirit they were. And, they would give us the best they had. We would, go to their houses for dinner, or we would go and, do a or whatever. And they always wanted to give us the best they had. And I was really humbled by that. And I saw how U.S. policy had put these people in a position where they didn't really have a lot of choices. And I think that was sort of the first time I realized that, wait, what do you mean we're not the good guys? I just had no idea of how U.S. policy had impacted other countries. And, they were still in power, and there were people who, they hated the U.S. They hated what we stood for. And, it's just a really eye-opening experience for me. And I just, like I said, it changed my view of the world. It made me to take a broader view, to step back and sort of understand things more in context. And so it made me reevaluate what I wanted in my life. And when I got back, it really eventually led to my leaving the LDS Church. Because I just had not, I just been so naive and so sheltered and didn't understand this broader view of the world and how choices we make and the people we vote for, and sort of all of that impacts other people's quality of life.
It's really interesting to me that going through that experience is what led you leaving the church, because it's usually supposed to be an experience of regaining and strengthening your belief in the church. But I didn't go on an LDS mission, but I was raised LDS as well, and really getting into the depths of the teachings and trying to live it and follow it, it made me question it even more and made me see all the inconsistencies, just kind of like what you were talking about as well. So it's interesting how things that are supposed to deepen faith really, lends a lot of people to question it and see from a different light and then leave it, trying to live it the way that they were originally taught.
Yeah, it just never, I was older. I was like, I left on my mission when I was, 24, and I was 26 by the time I got back, and sort of old enough to know better. And it just had never occurred to me to even question any of that.
Mm-hmm.
I was, it was like the sheltered piece of it. I just grew up in this bubble, and that experience just totally exploded around me. And, it wasn't even like I had a crisis of faith on my mission. I was still pretty committed to the whole thing, but it just rocked me, and I think, really led to me questioning. And, and I'm sure, as you know, it's an evolution. You just, well, at least I didn't, go from one day being a believer to the next day being not a believer. It was dismantling all of those years of that experience that, one, led me to really changing my political viewpoint and, changing my commitment to the LDS Church and deciding not to be a member anymore.
That's actually one of the things I wanted to bring up with you was giving your work in dealing with food insecurities and hunger and poverty. It seems like those are things that like major Christian organizations should be completely fighting for, but it seems like, especially here in the state of Utah, we have the, pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality and no understanding of the greater causes of what leads to these things to be perpetuated. How does that, like, dealing with that culture here affect the work you're doing now?
Oh, I lost the end of that question.
Just how does the mainstream Mormon Republican viewpoint of dealing with people on poverty and kind of blaming them for the situation that they're in, how does that affect your work that you're doing?
Oh, yeah, it does. I mean, it is very directly. Because Utahns Against Hunger does public policy work. We do advocacy, outreach, and education. And just even getting past the conversation of that we should be dealing with hunger in a charitable way, that the response to hunger is charitable, and that people shouldn't rely on government programs is really tough. And there are definitely folks who are in our camp, but they're few and far between. But, I really see the government safety net. That is our civic obligation, and it's our moral obligation to provide for people who can't provide for themselves for whatever reason. And, and I personally, I don't care why someone doesn't have enough income to buy food. We have, as a society, an obligation to provide for those folks, and we need to make sure that the programs are as strong and accessible as possible. And that notion that, that not everybody deserves to eat, and that they've done things to put themselves in a position that they can't afford that. It's just not okay. Like for me, it doesn't matter. We need to have a safety net for everybody, and that those programs should follow. And if government believes, and in Utah this is the case, that people who can work should work, then we need to make sure that the system's set up that if they're working, they're not poor.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. I think that's the most frustrating thing with the world to me, is we criticize people for being on public assistance, but we have policymakers who literally are passing laws to prevent municipalities from raising the minimum wage. And so you can't have it both ways. You either have to be satisfied that people are working and are earning so little that they're on public assistance, or you need to raise wages so that people don't have to rely on public assistance. I mean, it's not rocket science. The more income goes up, the more hunger goes down. Pretty easy calculation.
So is that the leading cause of food insecurity in the state of Utah right now, is just income inequality?
I mean, it's certainly for working families. I mean, it absolutely is. But in Utah, at least, so the food stamp case, I mean, and that's a program that we work a lot on, both in terms of policy and outreach. A lot of people think that, people on food stamps just need to work. And, a lot of people on, who are receiving food stamps do work. But when you look demographically, 89% of people who are on food stamps are either under the age of 17, over the age of 60, or are disabled. And so they're already populations that we consider vulnerable. And so this notion and people buying into this mythology that people who are on food stamps or who are on public assistance in general just need to get a job, I think once you see who's on those programs, you can pretty much start to dismantle those, those assumptions.
Mm-hmm. So why is it that that people have this idea that it's more than just these like certain demographics that are on these food stamps? Like, I think like here in Utah, people just feel that everyone's trying to mooch off the government, more or less. I don't know. That's on these food stamp programs.
Yeah, like, where does the idea that the majority of people on food stamps aren't in these already at-risk categories? Because you do hear the dialogue that it is people that are capable of working but can't are unwilling to work. Is that just like party line divides, or is that you see that crossing parties, or like what really is the root cause?
I think it crosses parties, and I really think it goes. I think it gets down to it's easier to believe that people who are poor are there because of choices they've made, because otherwise it requires such systemic change that makes it really difficult to go, oh my gosh, there has to be this huge systemic change in order to equalize things for people. It's easier to believe that it's their own fault because you don't have to take any personal responsibility. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that if people who are playing by the rules, people who are working really hard, who are doing what they've been told to do to achieve the American dream, if it can happen to them, then it can happen to me. And that's really scary for people. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's sort of a combination of all of those things that, I talk to people and they'll say, oh, well, I'm fine with these programs as long as people, as long as it only goes to people who really need it. Well, anyone who can't afford to buy food really needs the program. And so then you start going, okay, well, who's deserving and who's not deserving? And that's where people start doing these mental gymnastics. Well, if you use drugs, you shouldn't, then you don't deserve it. Or if you're, we see it in public policy. There's a prohibition in some states of people who have felonies can't get food stamps. They, in some states, they're drug testing welfare recipients. They, people who have, other sorts of barriers. We start listing who deserves to eat and who doesn't deserve to eat. And for us, everybody has a right to access to food, and not just access to crappy food, but access to good food. And Center Nutrition programs are the vehicle that we can make that happen. They're good programs, they're well managed, and In 2012, 4 million people were lifted out of poverty when they counted food stamps as income. So, it's certainly getting rich being on public assistance, but we're at least making their lives marginally more livable and making sure that they have food that they need to eat.
I see Utah touted all the time in national news for its work on homeless and the homeless population and the programs that we have here. Do you see us having the same type of policies towards just food insecurities in general here? The work that Utah has done around homelessness is really, it really has, resulted in, a lot of national attention, and it's not an issue that we work on directly, but you can see how a commitment to solving a problem, when people unite behind it, really makes a difference. And we struggle with that in Utah around food insecurity and hunger. We have, for example, one of the programs that we know makes a huge difference in the lives of particularly elementary age kids is breakfast, school breakfast. Mm-hmm. And we have the worst participation in school breakfast in the country. And the pushback that we get from state administrators, from schools, from parents is, all of those kids are just eating breakfast at home. Well, we know they're not. Not some of it maybe, but not all of them. And there's a real resistance to implementing policies that would make those programs, the program easier to access, like breakfast in the classroom. If we had a champion on the state level, either in the governor's office or, one of our congressional delegation who said, let's end hunger as we know it in this state, we could do it. And we could do it in a way that we could leverage the federal nutrition programs and make sure that there's no kid who starts the day hungry, that we could offer breakfast in the classroom in every single school in this state and make sure that kids start their day ready to learn. But we're not there yet. There really needs to be a fundamental shift in thinking about that. One, acknowledging that there's a problem, and two, committing the resources to make that happen. And it would be largely through federal programs. Up until, into the 1970s, through the Carter administration, we really had almost ended domestic hunger through federal nutrition programs. And it was under the Reagan administration when they started defunding and restricting a lot of those programs, where you see this incredible increase in the number of emergency food pantries, in huge food banks, because there just wasn't the commitment to food nutrition programs that there had been prior. So, we know those programs work. We know they're efficient. We know that, they're not perfect, but we don't need new programs. The programs exist, and, until we're willing to have the economic inequality conversation in a real way, then we have to leverage and make sure that the federal program can respond to the need, and we could absolutely end hunger in Utah if we were committed to it. Do you see a big difference working within Salt Lake City compared to the rest of the state, as far as Salt Lake being a pretty liberal place compared to the rest of the state? Oh, yeah. And, yes. And, that's, I think that, although we do have, there are people, across the state who are doing really good work in terms of, getting the word out about better nutrition programs or community partners. And, but there's still this preference for addressing hunger in the charitable way. Look at, there's probably about 5 or 6 emergency food pantries just sort of in Salt Lake City and in the surrounding areas. There are probably about 20 in the county, and a lot of those folks who would probably consider themselves liberal in terms of public policy are folks who
I mean, they're still donating to emergency food, which is they should do. It's great, but they're not necessarily holding their elected leaders accountable for the votes that they're making that weaken those programs. One of the things that we've been thinking about, how do we hold our elected officials accountable, and particularly our congressional delegation, that if you're voting against programs that weaken federal nutrition programs, then you're pro-hunger, which is really like what it comes down to. If you want to weaken the food stamp program, if you want to weaken child nutrition programs, then you are voting for hunger. And how do we, as an organization, how do we as a progressive movement, how do we engage in this conversation, and how do we get people to say, look, this isn't okay, and I don't support hunger, and you're my elected official, and I don't want you to support hunger. So, yeah, Salt Lake for sure is a lot more liberal, but in terms of, acting on that in a public policy realm, specifically around hunger issues, we haven't been able to build that movement.
I just don't understand how people can not see that eating is a basic right.
I know.
It just doesn't make sense to me.
Amen. I know. It makes me. It's just hard to understand. And for me, even it's like, how are we okay with saying that, you have a right to food, but unless you're working, you don't deserve to buy your food, and that you should be satisfied with going to an emergency food pantry, which, well, thank goodness those are there. They're completely inadequate. I mean, nobody can live on a diet of processed food and day-old bread. And that's just, I don't understand why we're not having a conversation about, the health consequences, and that it's really an investment in making sure that people are healthier. The better people eat, the fewer health problems they're going to have. And that's if nothing else, we should do it in our own best interest so we avoid healthcare costs.
Talking about access to healthy food, how can we combat food deserts in the state of Utah? I know we don't have it quite as bad as other areas, but if we don't stop it now and focus on it, those problems just continue to get worse.
Yeah, we're certainly, like you said, we're not as we're not in the same position as a lot of other large municipal areas, but there are pockets where people qualify living in food deserts, and I would say there are a couple of ways that we should be thinking about that, and some of the work that Utahns Against Hunger is doing around food policy and food environments. Hopefully we'll start making some progress on that. Utahns Against Hunger is a founding member of the Salt Lake City College Task Force, and one of the things we did a couple of years ago was a community food assessment, looking at where in the city there are, about food access issues. I mean, it was very broad. So there's, land usage, water usage, where do we get our food, how much do we import, how much do we export, across all broad categories, not just for low-income folks. But one of the things that emerged from that report was that there are some areas that there are food deserts. And, the federal government, there are some really great projects that are happening in areas where there are food deserts, and it's this funding that's available to address the food desert issue. So putting grocery stores in neighborhoods where people don't have access to full grocery stores, or working with existing, corner stores to make food more affordable and to put healthier food. But that's really an economic development issue. So I think getting people to think about food access, not just from sort of anti-hunger point of view, but really thinking about it as an economic development issue that if those dollars stay in that community, that benefits everybody in the community. It creates jobs. It reduces hunger. It certainly increases access to food. So really shifting our thinking that access to food isn't just about reducing hunger, but it is also a way to provide economic development for a community and and then ultimately, to meet the needs of that community, which then, includes transportation and, again, land use and all of those things that good public policy can really address an issue like hunger, but in a much broader way.
I saw that one of the programs is about getting food stamps into the farmers market. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so 5 years ago, Utahns Against Hunger, we got a little bit of funding. There were only at that time, there were only a handful of farmers markets accepting food stamps. The downtown farmers market is one in Moab, one in Logan, and then the Ninth West market, which used to be the People's Market, accepted food stamps. And we got a little bit of funding, and we started reaching out to other markets to say, hey, we've got this funding that will pay for equipment and for, the expenses associated with accepting food stamps. Would you be willing to do that? So it was 5 years ago, and in those years, there are now currently 21 farmers markets that accept food stamps, and Utahns Against Hunger has funded 13 of those. And that is from Logan to St. George, from Vernal to Tooele. And, that's something that we're really proud of. And last year, we got a grant from USDA where those participating markets can double the food dollars that folks are using at farmers markets. It's called Double Up Food Bucks. So somebody comes and uses their EBT card, which is the debit-like card that people use to spend their food stamps, and they'll double up to $10 of their benefits, and then with that extra $10, they can buy Utah-grown fresh fruits and vegetables. And what the research is telling us is that when people get incentivized to eat healthier, they do. I mean, it increases their resources. It's not really that surprising, but it's really, again, it's a way of helping those families put better food on the table, to reduce their food insecurity. But it also really has the added benefit of those food dollars staying in the community and supporting local agriculture. There are a lot of small producers and folks who are, really working hard to be farmers and to grow food, and this is a way to help increase their incomes as well.
Has there been a lot of adoption rate for people utilizing this program as far as the double up rewards and things like that?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Has there been like a large adoption rate of the users using their cards to get this program?
So last year, last summer, was our first year for Double Up Food Bucks. And it rolled out a little late. So we spent probably last year, I want to say, $30,000 probably in terms of those incentives. And I think we're going to at least double that this year. We're bringing on some more farmers markets, and the farmers markets have loved it. The farmers market in St. George, they doubled their traffic at the farmers market. And, for me, it's like, access to food, that's great, that's amazing, but it also helps people feel part of the community. If you've ever been to the downtown farmers market or to the Murray market or, really any farmers market, it's a community gathering place, and everyone should have access to that. And so, making sure that people can use their food stamp cards and, they can be part of the community. And I think that one of the things that we forget, or one of the things that I think is overlooked in low-income communities, it can be very isolating, and it's very shameful. And if you can feel like you're part of something that everybody else can participate in, I think that it feels less isolating. And, if you can go to the farmer's market and your kids can buy a peach or they can buy tomatoes or whatever, it just equalizes things a lot. And not that everybody needs to be the same, but I think that that's one thing about poverty and hunger is that there's a lot of shame associated with it, and people don't like to admit it. And so if you know that that's the one thing you don't have to worry about, it's one less stress. It's a way for you to feel included. And I think that's really important.
How can we work to eliminate that stigma associated with it?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. Let me clarify. Did you mean reduce the stigma of you being food stamped or reduce the stigma of being poor?
Both, I guess, really. They kind of go hand in hand, wouldn't they?
Yeah, so I would say, in terms of removing the stigma in using food stamp benefits, I think you just make it really routine. At farmers markets, they use a token system. Most people at the farmers market don't know what those are for. And we run the Utahns Against Hunger staff the food stamp booth at the Murray Farmers Market, and we did for a long time at the downtown farmers market. We would have people come by and ask if they could buy tokens, and we'd say, it's for people who have food stamps, and it was often an opportunity to sort of have this conversation about hunger and food insecurity. And so I think normalizing and just talking about it and saying that this is a really great thing for everybody, and that people can buy better food and support local ag and things like that. In terms of destigmatizing poverty, so my first response to that is that should we destigmatize poverty in terms of, I think we should all be ashamed in this country that there are people who are poor. I think what we need to really end is the stigmatizing of why people are poor. Mm-hmm. Poverty should be something that we're always working to end, and public policy should follow. And that's what we need to destigmatize, is that people aren't poor because of poor choices, or people aren't poor because they're immoral, or, all of those complicated things and hoops that we put ourselves through to justify why people are poor. That's what we need to address, is that, really well-intentioned people, like, they made bad choices. You know what? I made really bad choices. I'm a single mom. I got pregnant when I was 31. But I had every single advantage. I had a college education. I had a good job. I had health insurance. And when things fell apart, I was able to move back in with my family for 2 years. Well, according to some people, those poor choices should have led me to poverty, but they didn't, because I had a really strong safety net, a personal safety net, and not everybody has that. So we should make sure that in place of a personal safety net, the programs that are already there are strong enough to support people so that they don't have to be poor, and that we offer them the opportunity to earn better wages, to have access to health care, to have access to housing. And, this is a wealthy enough country that, people don't need to be poor, whether they're working or not. I've fallen into the trap of saying, people who are working 40 hours a week shouldn't be poor. Well, nobody should be poor. We could, elderly people who are getting Social Security or, choosing between paying their utilities and for medication is food. And somebody who has worked their whole life and paid into a system, or, who's a widow who didn't work, we shouldn't put them in a position to have to grovel for food. It's not okay. And I think that's way more immoral than giving benefits to somebody who somebody doesn't think deserves it. We have our priorities upside down sometimes, I think.
One of the other programs I saw that you guys do is a fruit sharing program. Would you mind going into that a little bit?
I'm sorry, the which?
The fruit share program?
Oh, the fruit share. I'm sorry. Yeah, so that really started, it has, sort of its history, I think, across a lot of organizations in Salt Lake and across the state doing that fruit share. But most recently, it was really started by Salt Lake City as part of the Food Policy Task Force. People could go in and register their fruit trees. And what it's evolved into is people can call Green Urban Lunchbox is really the main partner in that, and then Real Food Rising, which was part of Utahns Against Hunger and is now, because they were growing so quickly, is now part of Salt Lake Community Action, so that they can serve more kids. But you can register your fruit tree. Now they will go out and prune your tree. They will thin the blossoms, and when they harvest the fruit, a third can stay with the homeowner, a third goes to volunteers, and then a third goes to hunger relief organizations. So emergency food pantries like Hildegard's Pantry, which is part of the Episcopal Diocese, Salt Lake Community Action, emergency food pantries, and then, other folks. I think there are 3 or 4 other emergency food pantries to get that. But it really is a way of, there are a lot of fruit trees in this valley. People who used to have orchards, or they just have an old apple tree or apricot tree in their backyard, and taking food that's already there and putting it to good use. It's a great program.
That's amazing that they come in, they take care of the tree, and then everyone just reaps in the benefits of it. It just seems like a win-win all across the board.
Yeah, and there are some states that are now, or some, it's not states, cities, who are doing really terrific work with public orchards or putting fruit-producing trees in public spaces that are available to everyone. Now, if you have cities, city arborists and, the cities are already putting in plants and trees, why not put in food in those spaces? Instead of petunias, put in tomatoes. And I can't imagine that it would really take that much more maintenance in a public space to allow people to have access to it. And, that's not going to, it's not going to do anything to end hunger. Or at least not going to solve the problem across the board, but it really makes our public spaces more communal. And, maybe that leads to us more understanding of each other and destigmatizing the need to have food, the need to have access to food if you don't have the resources to buy your own. I mean, I think that's really cool that, the communal space and that communal sharing of fruit and of vegetables and, community gardens will often put in a row on the perimeter of a community garden that is available to the community so that people won't go in and take food from different plots. They'll plant tomatoes or things like that it's just available to anybody. And I think that's a really cool concept.
Yeah, we were just talking about it yesterday, how there's a bunch of decorative pear trees in my parents' neighborhood, and I was like, why can't they all just be real pear trees? It'd be so much better.
Yeah.
But I was actually thinking, my grandma, before she passed, she had a pear tree in her yard that we just couldn't pick the pears fast enough. They would fall to the ground, rot, and the birds would eat them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just an amazing program to have for someone like my grandma who wasn't able to do it, and we could only help so much.
Yeah, and that, and I think that is another thing is, organizations like Green Urban Lunchbox and Real Food Rising, and even Tree Utah, and there's an Avenue Fruit Share. How do we get all of these different groups who are, have these really great ideas who want to fill this gap of going into people's backyards? One part of it is reaching everybody who needs the service. How would your grandma have found out about, something like this, and making sure that folks have the resources to know that these services are available. And parents especially, I mean, gosh, they go from edible to rotten in like one day.
Yeah.
So, and then people end up taking out their fruit trees because they're a mess and they haven't been maintained and they get too big to pick. And, having that as a community resource, would be a way of increasing people's access to food and then maintaining those trees so that people don't chop them down.
Is there any programs that you're working on that you don't feel get enough attention that you would just like to see get that just a little bit extra attention?
All of them. That's my answer to that. No, so there's definitely school breakfast. All the child nutrition programs in general. I think people tend to think that they're sort of an autopilot. That right now Congress is doing child nutrition reauthorization, and there are some serious threats to that program. And in terms of some improvements that were made to the nutrition part of it and making sure that those meals are healthier, Congress is trying to undo a lot of those improvements. So, I think that doesn't get enough attention. And we talk a lot about programs for low-income kids, but, we're a really quickly aging country, and baby boomers are going to be needing a lot more help. And there are a couple of programs, senior congregate meals, which are meals that senior citizens can eat at senior centers, and they're run by the county. And in Salt Lake, all of the senior centers have meals 5 days a week. And nobody knows about that program. And so I think that could, use more utilization. And then, of course, the food stamp program, Congress is just constantly, trying to chip away at that. So I think in terms of attention, we would, Utahns Against Hunger would love to see more people respond to the policy issues. That, we would love to have a huge database of folks who, when we can send out an action alert saying, call Representative Stewart, call Senator Hatch, and tell them that you oppose these cuts. All of those programs need the attention, and it's one of the reasons why Utahns Against Hunger has been around for 40 years is, we're constantly playing defense on these programs to make sure that they maintain their integrity and that they're well funded. I think in the last few years we've been doing some more proactive work around farmers markets and some of the food and stuff that we're doing, and Real Food Rising was a real opportunity for us to do some youth leadership training, and they're doing well enough that they're expanding, but the need for advocacy around these programs is just never going to go away. And with the current sort of political landscape, they're more at risk than ever. And so, if you care about people's access to food, if you care about agriculture, if you care about, the old lady that lives across the street that is skipping meals, then, all of those programs deserve a lot of attention. And it's a matter of picking up the phone and making a phone call and saying, Representative Stewart, I'm your constituent, and I don't want you to vote for that food stamp cut. And if he hears from enough people, if he knows that his constituents care about it, then, his vote should follow. And otherwise, he will lose his seat. And we have to hold our policymakers accountable and making sure that when they vote against the best interests of their most vulnerable constituents, that there's a price to pay for that. And, that requires action by every single person who wants to reduce hunger.
A lot of our listeners are the type that want to take hands-on direct action towards problems, right? And so
Yeah.
on top of just, making a phone call or writing a letter, how can people really get involved and make, dramatic changes in not just their local community, but their larger communities abroad?
That's also a very good question. I think that, a lot of people who want to get involved really want to do that, more of that direct service, that, they want to hand a bag of groceries out to the folks at an emergency food pantry. They want to see what they care about. They want to really see action, which is so great. And, there are emergency food pantries across the state who really need that help. In terms of, it's a little harder, I think, to see your direct impact on public policy, like an organization like Utahns Against Hunger. I mean, we're a much slower burn. But, we have opportunities for people to volunteer, during the legislative session and helping us, organize events. We've done some food stamp challenge in the past, where we challenge policymakers to live on a food stamp budget for a week, and that takes organizing and time to put together. We're starting to talk about doing some candidate education, so people who know that system, who follow the election cycle, if somebody was interested in helping us do something like that, that would be great. I think that if people have ideas about how they would want, or they want direction about something they can do, we're open to having a conversation. We know that we don't have all the best ideas, that there are people out there who are thinking of ways to make a difference in their community, and we would love to talk to them about that.
So after all these years of working in basically your activist work, what has been the most rewarding moment for you?
Oh, I'm sorry. What is what?
What has been the most rewarding moment for you throughout all of your work? It's honestly, it's the little things. We in public policy, at least in Utahns, we don't usually have like big sorts of victories. Although I have to say this year we significantly changed the way the policy around for drug testing for people applying for cash assistance. Mm-hmm. That was enormously satisfying and I think a really big victory. But I think my most satisfying moments are those conversations that I have with people who call us who need help, mm-hmm. who they're scared. They don't know how they're going to feed their kids, or an elderly person who needs somebody to help them get groceries. I think those are the most satisfying moments for me is when I can talk to somebody on the phone who just needs someone to listen to them, who I can help them find a resource or we become a resource for them. And it really fuels sort of the fire in my belly to continue to do the work. Because if we depended on the victories in the policy realm, I would have quit a long time ago. It is those moments when I can talk to people who are impacted by this issue that really matters to me. And knowing at the end of the phone call that people are getting what they need and that there's a solution for them and that we're helping filling that gap and we're helping them put food on the table, and whether that's, helping them apply for food stamps, whether that is saying, hey, there's this resource, and it's going to be okay. And just listening to them and being able to calm their fears. People are scared when they can't feed their kids and they can't,
they have half a gallon of milk to last 3 more days. And it's like, you know what, it's going to be okay. And here's how it's going to be okay. And that to me is what is satisfying about the work that I do.
You mentioned people calling that are being personally affected by this. What if people are finding themselves in that situation? What is the best way to get resources and to get help?
Well, that's one of the things that we do. I mean, we do a lot of information and referral. So folks who maybe don't know that they're eligible for food stamps, we have a really simple food stamp calculator on our website that we can walk people through. And a lot of times people just don't know that they're eligible, or they were denied once and they think, well, I was denied 3 years ago, so I must not be eligible, or they're think if they apply for food stamps that somebody else isn't going to get them. And so, 211 information and referral is always a really good place for people to call for basic information, but people who are looking for broader information about food stamps and other nutrition programs, we really can walk them through that process. And, they just call our office and we always encourage people to apply because, the average benefit is not huge, but, if you get, $120 a month in food stamps, that might mean you can pay your utility bill, or that you'll have gas to go to work for the next, couple of weeks. And we can be that resource, and people can call us and find out and, ask us questions about, what it's like to apply. And I have to say that, the state of Utah has made it really easy for people to apply for benefits. They've really reduced the stigma of doing that. People can apply online. You have to have an interview to gather information, and they can do that on the phone. So, we spend a lot of time educating people about that process and trying to help them understand the state of Utah has really tried to reduce as many barriers as they can to that process.
Well, what are some other ways that people can find out more information about Utah Against Hunger and get involved?
Yeah, so we're sort of everywhere in the social media sphere. We're on Twitter and Instagram, and we have a Facebook page. We post a lot of information. On our Facebook page, we post a lot of policy stuff and sort of emerging issues that are going on, not only in Utah, but nationally. And then we, on our Facebook page, on our web page, there's information about, about what we do, how to contact us, and how people can get involved.
Okay,
and
well, oh, sorry.
Oh, no. I would really encourage, they can follow us on Twitter, which we retweet a lot, but a lot of times, we sometimes tweeting our congressional delegation about specific Utah issues, and then again on our Facebook page.
Well, great. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me be on your show. It was really great, and I look forward to hearing from folks.
This week you heard
Goby by Kaki King.
Right now you're listening to
Bleach It Black by Turning Machine.
I wanted to give a quick shout out to Ears to the Ground. They left this amazing iTunes review for us titled, "Did You Feel It?" I just found this podcast, and the anti-colonialism and animal liberation literally, well, not actually literally, but totally blew my mind. Inspiring, insightful, powerful, informative. Wow. Thank you. I am going to do something with that information now. I actually felt the same way first time I heard it. I loved it. If you haven't heard it, go back into the back catalog and check it out. It's a totally amazing lecture, part of our lecture series that we did. But thank you, Ears to the Ground, for helping out the show by putting that review in. You help make it easier for people to find the show through the algorithm math science thingies that mega corporations like Apple and Google do. Mm-hmm. So go help the show out. Go rate and review us on iTunes, and we'll give you a little shout out for doing it.
It'll help make America great again.
Again?
Back before it was Colonial Life.
Touche.
All right. Fuck you, damn.
No social, no.
Oh, that's right. That's a thing we do.
That is a thing we do.
If you're not our friend, if you're not yet our friends on social media, you should be our friends. Right now on Facebook, if you like us on Facebook and go and comment, you can get a chance of winning a free shirt. Hey, you stuck around to the end, so I'm giving you the heads up. Go on to Facebook, like us, and post a comment on that post, and you could possibly win a free shirt.
And right now, if you don't want to wait for a free shirt or the possibility, go buy one. Use a promo code FREEPATCH, like we mentioned at the top of the show. Get a free patch when you order it.
Yeah, told you we'd remind you.
Reminded. Now, what's your excuse?
It's that time.
Is it that time again?
Mm-hmm.
What time is it? Fuck shit, damn time. You just leave me hanging there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
No. Fuck shit, damn.
Which Side Podcast is hosted and produced by Jordan Halliday and Jeremy Parkin of the Which Side Media Collective, with web design by Jordan Halliday and sound design by Jeremy Parkin. Booking by Mari Halliday. Theme music by Commandantes. Go to whichsidecollective.org to check out the other shows in the collective. As always, fuck shit damn.